Coach Nick here live to talk to us about the latest coaching hire. Mike Brown, the veteran coach, joins the New York Knicks with big expectations and a big season ahead. Coach Nick on vacation in Japan. Appreciate you giving us your time.
Hey, my pleasure. Glad to be here. Konnichiwa. And yeah, anybody who has a chance to come to Japan, you have to. It's an amazing place. And I've been here for about 10 days. It's been incredible, crazy, and awesome.
Yeah, that's one place I definitely need to get to and check out. As I just texted you, we actually signed a Japanese player to our summer league team, Yude Baba, the veteran shooting guard. So Japan bringing out some talent, developing. Um, Maybe you're going to be doing some coaching missions out there.
We'll see. We'll see. I was trying to connect with some people. It's not easy. I don't think that basketball is the real prevalent sport here, but it's certainly growing around the world, and we'll definitely continue to have more and more players from. I'm sure there's going to be a good Japanese NBA player at some point sooner than later.
Most definitely. Well, obviously, we're here to talk about the New York Knicks' latest coaching hire. We've talked about Thibodeau and the Knicks' success recently on numerous occasions. It's always great to pick your brain, and we have a live chat in the building with us. Get your questions, comments in for Coach Nick and myself. We'll have Coach Nick for about 30 minutes, and then the second part of tonight's show, we're going to talk about the latest free agency and making more additions. The Knicks have made a few additions in free agency, coach, but the biggest addition is by far the coach, Mike Brown, a veteran coach. Give us your thoughts on that hire and what Mike Brown is going to bring to the table.
Well, it is interesting because, I guess part of the reason why Tibbs was fired is because he got to the point where he's one of those coaches where you can't quite get over the hump. You can be very good, he can improve, he can turn things around, establish a culture, but then at some point, there's maybe rigidity of adjustments and that kind of thing, and then you just can't quite get past it. So if that's why they fired Tibbs, I can't think of another coach who would have more of that reputation than Mike Brown, in theory. As another guy who, is a good guy for culture and for certainly offensive things, which we'll talk about in a minute. But there definitely seems to be a thing where maybe there's a limit to how far he can get his teams to go. What was weird was I was kind of looking through his coaching record. He coached Cleveland and he coached the Lakers for about a season and a half. And then he was with the Warriors, and then he was with the Kings. So he's only had three head coaching jobs, if I'm not mistaken. But it seems like he's had more. Like I was a little bit surprised. I thought, wait, isn't there another one in there? But I don't think so. So anyway, the point being that I think the biggest adjustment or the biggest difference they're going to get is with offensive play. I think the biggest issue we had with the Knicks under Tibbs was as Brunson took over more and more of the focus of the offense, it just everything stopped moving as much. The ball stopped moving, and it made the shots so much harder. Of which Brunson was still able to make an incredible amount of. But I think if you're looking at you having to play a 7 game series where teams have a lot of time to prepare and make adjustments game to game, in the regular season, when the teams are not doing that, you can find more success and have live off of that offensively. But when you get to the playoffs, as we saw, I think at some point, you're going to run out of bullets. And despite them getting pretty far in the playoffs, that's what happened. So if you're talking about Mike Brown, to get back to him, I think it's his offensive stuff is really what must have sold them more than anything else. And he's going to come in there. He's going to get the ball moving, get sharing a lot more. He probably argued that if we can do that, we'll get better defensive play because guys will be touching it and feel more in tune with the game itself and not just standing and watching Brunson operate. And so, yeah, it was just the whole thing was startling to me. We can even go back and pick apart the process of hiring Mike Brown to begin with, if you want, because I'm kind of curious to hear your take on all this.
Yeah, definitely. Great question, coach. And I guess that was unsettling. That's just the word that comes to mind because not only do you not have a coach after 6 years, but the search has got to be played out in the public eye, and we heard, interviewing this guy and reaching out to this team. And obviously, Jason Kidd, coach, was their number one target. he was unavailable, and so they did have Mike Brown very high up on their board. You know, it wasn't like he was Plan C by reports. And a lot of the Knicks local beat, with respect to them, covered this coaching search a lot more, in detail and accurately. But yeah, I think Coach Brown, with the words that come out, Coach, is that the Knicks liked the leadership and collaboration element. So he's going to bring some disciplinary things that Thibodeau had success with here, and driving these veteran players that do like to be, coached hard. And we'll get on to the practice elements, because I think Mike Brown reports are he's wanting to practice a lot more. With Thibodeau, reports came out that he didn't practice a lot at all during the regular season. Yeah, I think you hit the nail. I think offense, and reports that Mike Brown bought in to the Cat Brunson pairing and getting more juice out of that pairing, more 3-point attempts, maybe more two-man game, pick and pop. There are a lot of things we didn't see with Thibodeau. And I think, if I'm to guess, collaboration was the number one thing that the front office just didn't get from Tibbs. It was, okay, give me Tibbs guys, and he wouldn't try to experiment with some of the guys that maybe he didn't, feel fit his system, you know.
Yeah, the thing I think that was crazy for me was that they decided to fire him a few days after the season was over, and I just kind of felt like they would have already had their guy in mind and maybe had him slotted ready to go. That was when like Mike Malone and those kind of things were coming out, and the idea that they didn't really have anybody lined up, and then went through this interesting search where they were asking every team practically for permission, which doesn't always happen, if at all, in those situations, which indicated that there was a little bit less of a organization to this. Was there a method to this at all, or was it a rash decision, or because a lot of times when you fire a coach, it's not just, oh, one night they're like, hey, maybe we should fire him, and then the next day he's gone. Like this is something they must have been thinking about for a long time. So, I started thinking about it. I don't even remember if we talked about it last time I was on the show, but like, there was no question that there were a couple coaches in this playoff series from the day one where I'm like, they'd be better off with a different coach. And Tibbs was certainly one of them. There's another one who survived somehow or not. I'm not sure. In in Minnesota, I wonder if that's going to be the same thing that plays out like next year. So keep your eye on that. But there's just no question that, like, I think playing time, I think rotations and lineups, and were always a thing that we knew about Tibbs, right? So, like, coming in, was that ever going to be a backbreakers? Because that's what was going to happen. They're going to overplay guys. Guys could potentially get hurt from that. That's probably why he doesn't practice at all, right? And it's not. It shouldn't be looked at as different. I don't think any teams hardly practice. I don't think in the regular season you'll find too many teams that are going up and down like 5-on-5. Like, that doesn't really ever happen. So I'm not even sure what Mike Brown is saying they're going to do. I've been to some Mike Brown practices. I remember going to some in LA when he was with the Lakers, and with Kobe. And if you can remember that period, and this could inform what we talk about here, because he's got stars on this team as well, but maybe not as the level of Kobe. But I remember him coming in and wanting to install the Princeton offense in 2010, whatever that was, and that was Steve Nash, that was Kobe, that was I think maybe Dwight Howard, if I'm not mistaken. And what I was hearing at the practice and talking to different people and the coaches was something like, Kobe just simply wouldn't allow certain options of the triangle or the Princeton to be run. And imagine that, right? Like, imagine, him saying to Phil Jackson, "Yeah, we're not going to run the corner option of the triangle," and Phil would have been like, "Get the hell out of my gym," like, whatever. But Mike Brown, I think, was like, "Okay, that's what we're going to do." And then when you take that approach, you're probably going to get fired anyway, right? And that's what happened. Kobe gave him the death stare, and then he was fired, 5, 10 games into that next season. But what was exciting about the retention of Mike Brown after going to Golden State and then getting the head job back in Sacramento was that he finally got a chance to run the offense he always wanted to. And by the way, had Kobe or whoever allowed that to happen, they would have been awesome. Like, there's no question in my mind, if you had Nash and Kobe and those guys, and then Dwight Howard rolling, like, it would have been a really powerful offense to run. And so anyway, so that's I'm sure he went through and started showing them how all the intricacies of what they're running with the Princeton and the high post, and then showing Cat maybe getting a lot more elbow touches and then being able to step out and then out of handoffs. I mean, there's no question that that offense, which is already really. Here's the thing. What do you remember what their offensive rating was? The Knicks this year,
Yeah, so the Knicks came in at fifth, I believe, fifth net offensive rating.
right? So that's the real conundrum, right? That's elite. That's enough to be a championship contender. Now, defensively, I think it was not. It was 13th or 4, right? Were they middle?
Yeah,
Um,
11. I think 11 towards the end.
Okay, they got better as and again they get better as they tighten up their local rotations and don't play more than like the 7 guys. But then still, if you play 7 8 guys, you're going to be in trouble deeper into the playoffs in my mind. Um, so anyway, so I'm sure that was had to be the biggest selling point. Now the other thing about Mike Brown, like you've seen, he's been up to the old school. He might end up. Let's see, how should I put this? There are coaches who, in practices, will spend a lot of time talking and going over things. And then there are other coaches who just sort of throw the ball out there and say, "Hey, let's get going, let's get moving." And Mike Brown is definitely more in the camp, from what I've seen, of we're going to talk a lot. And over enough time, enough practices, enough situations where that talking could kind of get drowned out eventually, right? And it doesn't necessarily have the impact. And that's always the conundrum. I don't know if you saw it was really cool. There was the Netflix documentary about the Olympic basketball from last time, 2024. Ring of Fire. I don't know what's called. Anyway, I'm embarrassed because I had the director was on my show talking about it, and it was terrific, by the way. So you all should watch it. But the point was, they have the most incredible back behind the scenes footage of the coaches in the locker rooms, and you really get a good insight there. Where I would think that Mike Brown might not necessarily excel as well in that area, and I think in the NBA level, that's where you need to be able to do it. Where pregame, halftime, even postgame, to be able to keep those teams together, you got to be able to excel in that kind of in those communication situations. I doubt that Tibbs was great at that either. So that's going to be something that could come up as well eventually, because at some point we see like Mike Brown's, there is a expiration period. It kind of feels like at some point, even though he did get a nice run in Cleveland for a while, but since then it hasn't been that long.
Yeah, it's such a nuanced conversation, Coach. In terms of, I know the casual fan and the black and white is, is Mike Brown better than Tibbs? Is Tibbs better than Brown? It's about maximizing the roster, and I think the front office wouldn't have kept Tibbs that long if they didn't appreciate what he brought to the table. At the same time, I think they wanted that experience, a guy that has been down that road, because they did interview Micah Norrie, the rising assistant
Hmm.
in Minnesota. They spoke to Dawn Staley, obviously the legend college coach. They spoke to Taylor Jenkins, who I think was the second in line to get this job, and we'll talk a little bit about Mike Brown's staff that he's assembling. But I just think it was about maximizing the roster, coach, in terms of Cat and Brunson. You've invested $100 million in that pairing. The Knicks were the only team in the NBA with two All-Star starters in that, and I think they just want to see how far that can go. And so I don't think if you gave them truth serum that they would say Mike Brown was their number one choice, because I think it was clear that that wasn't the case. But they believe in what he can bring, and he really sold them on the buy-in of Cat and Brunson, and maybe playing a lot faster. But I'm looking forward to
Yeah.
seeing some defensive versatility, because I think we spoke, Coach. Tibbs never tried zone, never went zone, never blitzed, and I think Mike Brown is known to throw in some zone as well.
Right. And in Tibbs' defense, he also got stuck without Mitchell Robinson for most of the year. And I think we had even talked about this, is that some of their best lineups are probably going to be Mitchell Robinson alongside Cat, and having Cat shift to power forward a little bit to have a backup rim protector on the court. And and we saw what Mitchell Robinson was doing, like a one man wrecking crew. Ironically, it was more on the on the offensive end for offensive rebounds, but certainly he was also anchoring defensively. Yeah, the no zone thing is really strange. I just was on Twitter the other day talking about this, because I was a strict, I played man to man when I was coaching, but I was also a triangle offense coach, and oftentimes our offense worked so well that the other team would start playing zone on us. And so the only way to prepare for that would be for me to have zone being played in our practices. And then at that point, I'm like, you know what? Like, there's no reason to look at a 2-3 zone like it's child's play, whatever. It's like it could be pretty good. And then we started using it, and we were like winning games by like just playing a solid 2-3 zone. And I was like, gosh, why would I ever have thought, oh, we're only going to play tough man to man or like an amoeba aggressive zone and not just fall back into a 2-3. 2-3, Syracuse has shown that it's really, a powerful thing when it's played right. So there's no question. And here's the thing with Mike Brown, who has the same kind of criticism because he had Sabonis on his team, who is a real defensive liability in the same way that Cat is. And so I suppose as part of the interview process, he's gonna be like, listen, I can commiserate, I know how to do this. But then he also was able to utilize zones with Sacramento a little bit more. And you know what? I was looking up, I'm on my phone now, but I can't look at, but like I was looking up Sacramento's defensive rating. I believe they were, again, middling. They were never really beyond average. If I don't know if you've looked it up, and so
Yeah,
they never really solved that. Even though, interestingly enough, in the past we've seen a number of very stout, defensive teams that have played really well overall defensive rating with poor defenders at like the four. Although the four is not really the same as it was even 10 years ago. But if you really want to go way back, I can remember like David Lee and the Warriors was on an elite defensive team, and he was the starter playing a lot of minutes before Draymond even came in under Mark Jackson. So, but I even remember that era. There was a few other teams too. Again, it's different, but there's probably ways where you can sort of mitigate the issues. And I just feel like Tibbs never figured that out because they try and play drop with Cat, and in the playoffs, so everyone's ready for that. It just didn't work. That they were generating way too many good shots. Then they'd have Cat come up, and then you get blown by. So it was a real problem. You got to hide Cat in a better way, and that's why zone would come in okay in a better. It might help.
yeah, and if you want to sort of define what may have done Tibbs in is just a lack of willing to make an adjustment or making it too late. So the Knicks were down 0-2 against Indiana, and that's when he decided to take Hart out of the lineup and try double bigs. And apparently the front office had suggested he try that in the Boston series, the series earlier, and he didn't do so and was reluctant. And so I think we are going to see more collaboration. But in terms of, with Mike Brown's offense and defense, there's a question coming in from Buzzer Beater. Ultimately, if Brown is here to tap into the offense, was that the direction you would go if you were coaching this roster? Because they say the best version of defense is your offense. If the other team is constantly picking the ball out of the basket, that helps your defense get set, and get back a little bit, better. And I guess if you are trying to, look at Indiana and that series, obviously they're not going to be as much of a factor with Tyrese Halliburton out next season. But, if you want to play a little bit faster, you need to outscore these teams.
hmm I mean, there's no question that when you're a good scoring team, it'll help your defense because, like you said. But that's what the Knicks were. They were fifth in offensive rating. And now we can look at the drop off in the playoffs, which every team will, encounter as the teams get better and you play deeper into the playoffs. And that is the issue, right? Like, what did it become? Is like, Jalen Brunson pounding the ball for 12, dribbles and then doing some sort of step back, mid range, very tough shot, right? Or something like that. But yeah, so it's just kind of a weird conundrum in a way that Tibbs could argue pretty vehemently. It's like we had a great offense. I know you made the style you don't like, but we were putting the ball in the basket, more than almost anybody else in an efficient manner. So yeah, and if that's the case, and then you start looking at the lineups. And so if management's going to like suggest, playing a double big, and then he says no, like that's a rough one as a coach because you better start, you know, getting your suitcase out of the closet, because at some point they're the ones who are going to make that decision for you, right? And if they're bold enough to do that, and like there's probably a lot of management or ownership, I don't know exactly if it's front office or what, who would end up saying, would never say anything. It's like, well, that's not our place. We're not going to suggest things, right? And then they're never in a position to have to deal with a coach defying them and then having to make a decision. Well, let's just say with Leon Rose, right, making that, whatever. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't Tibbs had gotten there before Leon Rose, right?
No, so Leon was Tibbs was Leon's hire.
Okay.
Yeah, he's his first hire as the coach, and obviously he's got that one bullet that's been used now. But I just want to quickly add, like Thibodeau didn't, just going on the advantage of Mike Brown practices. Thibodeau didn't experiment during the regular season. Now, if he had tried a few things, he could have gone to the front office and say, "Hey, I was willing to
Hmm.
experiment. We had 82 games, and we were winning a lot of games. We had time to experiment. We had Huck Porty available when Mitchell Robinson was out, and he didn't want to try any double big lineups, despite Cat struggling because they were winning games, and I think that was sort of masking." Some of the failures that were going to do us, over in the playoffs because, with Brunson scoring the way he does, full and well, coach, you're going to win games.
Yeah. No, and that's what he would do. Right. When you play your starters more minutes than any other starters, and I imagine that 5-man lineup had more minutes than almost everybody, right? Yeah, and that was always his formula, right? He's just going to keep those guys in longer, and then that to the detriment of Deuce McBride and guys like that developing, right? Listen, we've talked about this, whatever, playing like Precious, is the kind of guy who, he's not going to give you the kind of minutes you need in the playoffs. So I can see why he just sort of go away from that. But there's a better balance here in terms of what you can get. Like you could probably still win those games by cutting Brunson's minutes from 36 to 34. And then and getting and OG, getting him 3 extra minutes in there, here and there, and at the to the benefit of then the development. But yeah, I don't even know if it's that. I have to imagine it's more about just no zone, no other creative solutions to defensive stuff that they were getting burned on all season long. And I think he just relied on the fact that he was going to tighten the rotations and that it would continue to work. And at some point, by the way, if the Knicks don't lose game one at home against the Pacers, like that whole series is different. And that maybe they're in the finals, right? And then maybe Tibbs is not fired. You know what I mean? It was so it like that whole thing is so insane. And now I'm trying to rack my brain from that one because it seems like it's about 3 years ago.
Well,
Um,
the players had a lot of feedback in the say of firing Thibodeau because
yeah,
they were very vocal, in terms of being left a little bit exposed from not trying things in the regular season. Deuce McBride, who's a very mild-mannered sort of role player, important player on the team, but yeah, he had some pretty honest quotes about getting so close but just being left exposed. Look, a lot of the comebacks as well against Boston, quite fortunate to come back, 20 points down, four
hmm
times. I think they were the first team in postseason since '05 to have more than four 20-point comebacks. So I think they also want to maximize their window. Ultimately, they know that next year the East is wide open. It might be the Knicks' best chance in 20 years, coach. So I think that was
hmm
a catalyst, as well. But in terms
I'm
of
just I'm checking the stats a little
yeah,
bit real quick. I'm not looking, but yeah, go ahead.
just in terms of practices, in terms of a great quote that I saw in an ESPN piece on Mike Brown was he was on his players about not fouling when the offensive player was back to the basket up three.
Yeah,
So that hopefully we see something better. And another thing was like late game execution, and knowing those sequences, being on the same page. So I think practice will help with that. Should it?
yeah. Oh, and for sure, and I had now I'm remembering that game too because there was a distinct, there was two or three breakdowns that the Knicks made inbounding the ball, and that cannot happen. And then the following up by three is a real problem that we've seen the Knicks struggle with in the past. Sometimes they do it right, and other times they don't. And Tibbs had been like, well, they should know how to do that. But you're right, the practice will help that as well. Now, Mike Brown, I'm searching my memory banks, also isn't great about following up by three or having that executed either. I feel like we've seen, I mean, you coach long enough and you're going to end up, finding situations where the players screwed it up and then he's going to have to bite the bullet and just say, like, yeah, it was our fault or something we didn't tell him or whatever. Now, ironically enough, Mike Brown gets fired as well because he lights up one of his players who wasn't close enough to, a shooter who hits a three and I think he gets fouled. Like it was a 4-point play, maybe that cost him a crucial game this past year. And you never want to, sort of light up your star player, De'Aaron Fox, in a post game press conference, like he kind of did. I don't think it was that serious, but it was enough. And then that I think he was fired the next day or something like that. Um, but there's no question, yes, that there was some stuff slipping through the cracks that you wouldn't think that Tibbs teams would do. And in the past, they seemed better prepared, probably because, like you said, they practiced more and he had more influence. And I think at some point that influence started to wane in a variety of ways. And one of them is, yeah, if you're not practicing enough and just hopefully assuming that, oh, they know this from Villanova or whatever, and like they play together, somehow they're gonna figure that out. But I can, yeah, now I can, in my mind's eye, I can see Josh Hart has the ball out of bounds, frantically waving. Somebody come back. We're not prepared at all for a press, like, coming out of a timeout that we should have been. Oh yeah, they'll throw the ball down the court, and like again, they got lucky because it wasn't the turnover. Right down that stretch. This is leading up. This is the game where Halliburton hits that crazy step back three. I think that ball bounces up and then back through. That's the one.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I think
Yeah, and so.
practice makes perfect, coach, and I'm okay with more practices as long as he's deeper into the rotation. What are your thoughts about that? Because reports, Mike Brown, I'm sure in the mandate during the interviews, you got to play 9, 10 guys. The Knicks roster is deeper, and feel free to chime in on the Knicks adding Jordan Clarkson and Yabusele off the bench, who was really good above the break threes, 80% in transition as well. So I think the Knicks can really tap into those 5-out lineups.
hmm Yabusele, I think, is a nice addition. Jordan Clarkson's one of those guys that you have to be. You have to. I don't know. I don't know if he's going to, give you what you need to do on a really good team. I mean, he's gosh, he could score, right? Not necessarily very efficiently. His shot selection might not be great. Defensively, I don't think he's going to help you. So that's going to be an interesting, you got to play him. Like there's certain players like that where you got to figure out the optimal amount of minutes where you can get the best of it without sort of sliding into where it's going to start hurting you a lot. And it's tantalizing because sometimes they'll go on a run. Clarkson could hit like 10 straight points, right? And you're like, oh, he's an all-star, microwave off the bench. But I do feel like that's going to be an interesting, balance because let's just say it's 20 minutes a game, right? Maybe it's like even like 18. Is Clarkson going to accept that? And is he going to be upset about that? Is he going to cause problems in the locker room, all that kind of stuff? I don't know. If they're winning enough, because he hasn't really been winning too much in his career. I feel like that might be enough. He might be at his point where he's like, "Hey, I'm happy. Just want to contribute, and we're winning all that stuff." So that'll help a lot. But and then Yabusele as well. It seems like the kind of guy who's willing. He certainly had a path where he's barely played. He's barely gotten the chance. He's gotten the chance, and we've seen enough of that where I suspect he's in a good mind frame where he can handle that. Now I'm trying to picture now that position's depth chart. It's going to be tough for him to get any minutes, isn't it?
I'm sure that there's guarantee during the free agent meetings, but yeah, this is the sort of 10-man rotation that I've got up on screen. I think we'll see Deuce McBride, Clarkson, backcourt off the bench. Hart will probably slide to the bench if they start Mitchell Robinson, who
Hmm
should be healthy to start the season. Yabusele can play 4 or 5. Um, so I think it fits like a glove. I think the Knicks are in the market for one more veteran, which I'll talk about later in the second part of tonight's show. But yeah, I think the Knicks have got their core 9 guys at
Yeah.
the moment.
Yeah, I'm looking at this. I wonder if that's going to ultimately be the starting lineup. I mean, let's see. Do you know what the lineup you have out here? That was what they were starting with. Do you know what the net rating was on that? Was it extremely positive?
So yeah, it was a lot better. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Knicks had the worst net rating of the Josh Hart starting five, which was the most
Yeah.
played, and that's what Tibbs' reluctance to go away from really puzzled many people, and I'm sure including the front office. And so he, ultimately got the tap on the shoulder, down 0-2. He went with Mitchell Robinson, and they had success immediately. But Indiana
hmm
was just a bad matchup because they play so fast. coach.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah, and they had had the experience from the year before, and again, like it was interesting Carlisle versus Tibbs matchup as well, where they played the long game. And I mean, I can remember talking about this with you the last year too, where they were going to run them and rely on the fact that OG was going to play a whole lot of minutes, and then they were going to get he comes up with a hamstring injury, which in my mind is directly related to that overplaying kind of thing. So yeah, yeah, that's interesting, and certainly if there's one commonality between a lot of coaches, maybe it's even coaches of a certain age, is the lack of focus on the lineup data itself, to the point where I suppose we know that Tibbs had seen the data with Hart, and the reason why you can get Hart on the regular season is playing harder than anybody else. So all those, I think Coach Kerr had called it like he gets the 30-70 balls, not the 50-50. He gets the 30-70s. That doesn't happen nearly as much in the playoffs because the other team is now they're going to get a bunch of those too, and then you can prepare to just ignore him, right? And when you ignore him and from that position and he's in the corner, like you can really do a lot of damage to the offense itself, gumming up the works and getting in the way of cuts and getting in the way of Brunson and making all those shots that much harder. There's probably an argument. I got to kind of dig through the footage again that like Cat became very neutralized, right, and was not involved in the offense way too often. And I would like to look at the lineups when that was happening most, and I wonder if it was when Hart was on the floor as well, because it's an extra rotation guy. If he's going to try and pick and pop, if Cat's going to pick and pop, and then it's not there because they're ignoring Hart, like that's I don't know if I looked at that like that, but that had to be part of it. But again, the other part was the coach needs to tell the point guard, the guy who's controlling these possessions, you need to get Cat involved more. That's your job. And we've lost that kind of Chris Paul role, right? Who the guy's going to manage? Oh, this guy hasn't gotten a shot. We got to get, hey guys, let's run this, get him open, get him a shot. Like that doesn't really happen much anymore, right? Which is really too bad. And you can argue that they could benefit from having a player like that on the roster as well. They don't have anybody. I mean, the backcourt is going to end up having me like what Mikal Bridges with him, um, and then OG, and then the two bigs. Like there isn't. I guess it's Brunson is the only like playmaker. Is there a secondary playmaker? Because Mikal Bridges is going to be a guy who's going to do a two dribble pull up into a midi and finish. He's not making that extra pass, right? And he probably shouldn't. He's good at that. Maybe it's
well,
Cat, I guess, who's the other guy.
yeah, you raise all the great talking points because with Tibbs, I'm sure he would have used that as an argument to say, hey, I need Hart out there as a hub. Hart is a great off-ball screener as well. Obviously the floor spacing was the issue. That was it. But Brunson needed to get off the ball at times, but with the lack of other ball handlers, Mikal did
Yeah.
get stripped. Not the tightest handle, laid in some huge high leverage situations. But with the pace, and I've got some stats, so Mike Brown's pace was what 14th. The Knicks were 29th, basically dead last. So how is that going to come from? Is Brunson going to start to play faster, or if he's playing less minutes, can he maybe speed up the pace a little bit? I'm a fan of the skip pass, like you've documented well a lot. Like why not have Cat just flash to the top, and Brunson throw the skip pass, relieve some of the ball handling, because he
hmm
was pressured like every single series. Brunson is getting hammered full court. So I think the Clarkson pickup is really good. He'll help you get downhill a little bit. But the rumors are the Knicks are trying to fill their final spot with another ball handling guard. They've reached out to Ben Simmons, and they've had conversations with some other type of guards like that. Just I'm assuming just for the ball handling.
Yeah, I mean, and Ben Simmons is just another guy who is going to be tough because he doesn't space the floor at all. And it's funny because there are guys out there that who can shoot close to 40% from three on low volume because they're just being ignored. And no matter how many of those shots they make, they will never have gravity. Like, and that's the whole point, right? Is it's not even like you can make them pay a couple one and a half times a game, I guess, but there's going to be 30 possessions where they're just in the way of everything else, and it's a net negative. Now over enough time, eventually, okay, we'll have to kind of give him some more gravity and get out there maybe. But like Draymond Green's a good example. He'll never have gravity. They'll never guard him out there, no matter how many he makes, of the threes. Now, Ben Simmons is another one of those guys, but again, they need a secondary ball handler at the guard position. They just
like
need it. You need someone off
like
the bench to do
TJ.
that at the very least, and then to play along the starters as well for the 5 minutes or something you're going to have when you end up they play together. And again, you have to be wary of the regular season success that you might see teams have, like the Knicks, because you have to be able to look at this through the crucible of what the playoffs are going to bring in a 7 game series when they're prepared for you. And that was, I think we could have had this discussion in December of last year saying, this is going to be a problem. What we're seeing with Brunson and the overuse is what we've been saying the whole time. And again, Tibbs must be, really, really frustrated. I mean, he got them really far, right? And it was like that one crazy bounce away from, like, it's like that's a coin flip, right? They were right there. He probably deserved another year. But either way, here we are. Now, the thing with Mike Brown, I think offensively is, and they just better get touches for Cat on the high post. I'm really, really excited about that. I just, in my mind's eye, trying to picture the offense running, under Tibbs this last year. I just can't see it. I'm picturing like a lot of, sort of standing in the corner cat stuff. I see pick and pops that maybe he wouldn't get the ball a significant amount of time, and then there would be moments where like he finally was just like F it, I'm just going to light it up every time I touch it, right? And then he'd go on those runs, right? He had a fourth quarter run, I feel like that was awesome, and it literally was just like I don't care about the rest of the team. I'm just going to have to get these shots up, and that worked, right? But it was hard again. It wasn't in the flow of the offense, and so again, if they can use him as a hub, and that gets Brunson off the ball, right? That gets Brunson, maybe feeding him at the elbow and then cutting off of there, and then later down you get some fake handoffs or handoffs and stuff like that. Now you got some more downhill, which should make Brunson's job a lot easier, and it would make I bet you like Deuce McBride could run that kind of stuff, right? And then now you got him being a little bit more of a playmaker off the dribble, which we never really would had seen too much of. Maybe Clarkson as well, but the Clarkson stuff. What I get worried about is like the ISO 20 footers, things like that you got to cut out if you want to be a really good team.
Yeah, and the chat's, chiming in and just mentioning Kolek. The Knicks drafted a pass first point guard last year, Tyler Kolek out of Marquette, one of the best playmaking guards in the class, Big East Player of the Year. His defense is the big question mark, but I think he's 24 years old. He is going to be a big time player in summer league, coach. So I think they'll be looking to see if he could crack the rotation. The chat's asking, would you think CP3 would be a good ad over if you could move Deuce or Colette, get CP3? What do you think? Bit too old?
I mean, yeah, I kind of feel like he's past his expiration date. Kolek is an interesting guy. I could, obviously it's a veteran team that Tibbs had, and I could just see why he just I'm not playing that rookie. I'm just not doing it. Maybe he just thinks, oh, he's not going to be able to play my kind of defense, which I think is nonsense at this point. And I hope it's not just like based on looking at him, right? He's not like ripped, and he's not jumping out of the gym or whatever. But a lot of we've seen plenty of opportunities for guys like that who are smart, who can figure out positional stuff early and be there and be able to just play good team defense. It's funny because it's a guy like Reed Shepard is in a similar situation in Houston, where he has a lot of promise, played really well, and he couldn't. I didn't see anything really. By the way, I didn't even see much in Reed Shepard in summer league last year. He didn't. I don't think he did that well. And then, as it proved, he didn't. It didn't translate to the regular season. Do you remember how Kolek played in summer league last year?
Yeah, he was excellent. Excellent. Got to his spots. I think he, had a couple of go-ahead floaters to tie it and win a game late.
Hmm.
So he can. I think the three ball above the break looks promising for me. It looks like he can, really play off ball with catch and shoot. The shot mechanics look good. I just think
Hmm.
defensively, with Thibodeau, if you can't hold your own defensively, you're not really going to play much because the playmaking was already there, coach. He would come in, he would organize guys, he would get guys in the
Yeah.
corners, and I think he had a 10 assist game. He had a MVP of the G League showcase event. So I just think like with the veterans, you had Campaign, you had Delon Wright late, Brunson with playing so many minutes. That's the other thing. Where do the minutes come from? When Brunson's playing close to 40, and you sign Campaign for a vet minimum, you kind of probably promised him,
Hmm.
the second option. And so hopefully this year is, the turning of a leaf. But just quickly on what you said with Cat. So they would throw a wing on Cat. That was the problem. Cat couldn't establish good positioning down low because they would always put a wing on him who would front. They would do a good job of trying to front him. And I think the
Hmm.
other thing that Tibbs didn't like above the break was Cat doesn't set great screens. He needs to improve. He's very skinny at the hips, and he would
Hmm.
always maybe set an illegal screen.
Yeah, he get wide with his feet too. That's another good point. Which, like Mitchell Robinson's much better at setting those screens, and which is why, yeah, and that's why they were probably finding more success as a team with Robinson and Cat together as well. Robinson setting some more of those screens, getting more separation for Brunson, vertical rolling, and then yeah, but that's at the expense of Cat having to become just a spot up player, right? And not as involved. And that's
But
going to be the conundrum. Now, obviously, if you were in that meeting and you're trying to get that job, you start diagramming the Princeton high post offense, and they'd be like, "Oh, this is perfect. This will solve all that in one shot, and with the continuity and motion." So, yeah, again, like he was a good. Mike Brown had a really great resume for that. Like it was a really good. It makes a lot of sense to me now. Like, but again, he also tends to be that same kind of class of coach who might not be able to get the team beyond where they have to go, and gets into a certain point, and then you got to bring in the guy like the Phil Jackson or the Popovich, that kind of guy that can then get you to the next level. Um, and so I just worry that that could be the thing. But if there was ever a moment where there's an opportunity here in the East, certainly because Indiana is now kind of like, I don't want to say they're dismantling it, but they lost Turner. They're not going to have Halliburton, so they're not going to do it next year. You have to be worried about Philly, because if they're healthy, they could beat everybody, right?
I think with Philly, yeah, it comes down to health. But there's some moving parts. They've got to bring back Grimes. They might move Paul George. Um, But yeah, just on quickly, I think it comes down to heart because with Cat, if let's say you're playing Yabusele, coach, your defense might be pretty struggling. But if you're five out, they can't really put that wing on Cat, can they? And I think you have to counter. Like you made a great point about the playoffs. You might think, okay, I've established this way to win in the regular season. What happens
Hmm.
when a Hall of Fame coach like Rick Carlisle just throws a spanner at you and TJ McConnell's going crazy and he's going 11 man into his rotation and you have to be prepared to adapt. You have to counter that.
Oh, absolutely. Like uh, when Halliburton is controlling possessions as well as he has, and you have to get it out of his hands, right? And there's ways with doubles and jumping at him and stuff like that, which they also didn't seem to be willing to do too much of either. And so, yeah, I mean, and now the question is, does Mike Brown have that in his DNA as well? Like, he certainly is more willing, and we've seen defensively for him to do some stuff. And with the Warriors too, we saw. I'm racking my brains when Coach Kerr was hurt with his back, and Mike Brown had taken over, and they went on that huge run. They won, right? Oh, wait a minute, or was that? Oh, wait, sorry. Luke Walton did it once and went on a huge run, but then Mike Brown took over. What am I remembering here? My mind is mush on my vacation. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Vaguely, yeah, I know it's sort of going back a little bit. I do know that obviously, look, coach of the year, Mike Brown, 23-24 with Sacramento, got them
Yeah.
to the second seed. And that's what I really look at, a coach that could still overachieve with Sabonis and Fox, not a great defense, but their pace was up. And my thing is, I'm so curious to see how fast we can play. We don't have a De'Aaron
Mhm.
Fox coach. So are we just going to have to master the half court sets and empower your Macau Bridges a lot more with Thibodeau? Just the amount of on ball reps Macau Bridges got was just very very low. Um, he was a corner spacer coach, and I think you need to bring him into the action a lot more. He actually sets good screens. Does
Mhm.
Macau Bridges?
Yeah, Yeah, and I think what you're saying is the passing needs to the passes per game need to go up as well. I got to check that as well. I feel like they were down low as well. That's one of my favorite stats to look at. Even though there's rarely, I love to say as a coach, oh, there's a huge correlation between number of passes per game and then offensive rating. And it's not always the case. Like certain teams can limit the number of passes and still be very efficient and score really well. So it's not like a great a perfect correlation. But when you look at certain situations like this, it does make sense to me that like a guy like Bridges would open up a lot. And I just think that the cat thing, making him more of a hub, but that means that Brunson's going to be have to be willing to do that. And it's just it's interesting to see how that dynamic evolved, because it just seemed like at some point a switch flipped where Brunson was like, I am the man. I'm going to control all these things. I'm going to make sure that the shot is the right shot to be taken, and it's probably going to be me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it didn't maybe necessarily feel that way even in the beginning of last season, in the regular season, but like, you know what I mean? Like, at some point later on in the year, it became that, and then Tibbs didn't sort of do anything about it. They were still winning, and they got all the way as far as they did. But that was interesting, and then that's another one of those things where who has control and who has enough control over this. The dynamic of having his father on the bench as well, which is interesting, and he's going to be there, right? They're not. Mike Brown has to hire him. I think that's the report, right?
Yeah, so great segue. My Rick Brunson is staying, but he's taking a lesser role. He's going to step back and not be the lead assistant. And so Mike Brown has his free will to sign his lead guy. And the Knicks are trying to bring in James Borrego, who was a close candidate for the job in itself. But as an assistant, I don't think the Pelicans are going to let him go. But I like the chain of thought. I like that they're trying to bring in a lead assistant who's head coach material. Thibodeau wouldn't lean into his assistants, wouldn't talk to them during the huddles first before the players, and I think it's fair. Like with respect to Rick Brunson, I think if he's open to step back and we bring in another experienced assistant, that's going to be great
Is that
for
right?
coach.
I can't picture that. Tibbs wouldn't huddle up with the coaching staff before the timeouts or in the beginning. Hmm,
No,
that's
not at
fascinating.
all. No,
Um, and
less
I would just have,
collaboration.
as a word of caution, as a coach taking a job, and then they kind of have you, or they put in place as your first assistant a guy who already has been a head coach before. That's a little bit rough, because then you start to think if you get on the hot seat at all, they're like, oh well, we can just switch to this guy.
Yeah,
He's got lots of experience.
I guess with
That
Mike
we
Brown, he's got experience being fired. He just doesn't care anymore right now, I feel. Another great
Right.
report came through that he wanted the job more than anyone. Like he expressed the most enthusiasm. To me, I know some people might roll their eyes and say, oh, look, he's going to get paid. But don't forget, he's still getting paid by Sacramento. He's got 14 million still owed. So he could chill, he could relax, but he really wanted this challenge, and I don't think he's going to be scared if he gets fired. He's got at least a year or two to drive this thing home past the
Yeah.
finish line.
And by the way, you're talking about enthusiasm. Mike Brown is at the top of the list of that as well. He gets in there. He is excitable, and that'll exude when you're interviewing without question for those jobs. So and it's a different style. I've been criticizing Tibbs for the communication style, the body language for all these years. And they'll assemble players around him that don't necessarily need to feed off of any kind of positive energy per se, but either you get tuned out eventually because it's the constant bellowing and it's just a negative body language, or what was the other possibility? Either you get tuned out or they gosh, I forgot what I was going to say. But at any rate, it's not great. Oh, I know that you bring in players who don't. It doesn't really affect them necessarily. Like tough guys like Brunson. You don't have to pat them on the back at all or be positive at all. They're going to give you their the most they can do. But invariably, you're going to have X percentage of your team that doesn't play optimally that way, right? And it could be 50% of the team, could be 40, could be 60, and there's no question. And we saw it with Doug Christie coming in. Again, it's weird parallels because the issues that Mike Brown had, got cleared up almost overnight with Doug Christie, right? He comes in, changes the lineups, plays Keon Ellis a lot more, is a lot more excitable, and I mean, it's hard to be more excitable than Mike Brown, but like kind of changed the tone a little bit and didn't dwell on negative stuff as much as whether it's reporting goes. And so that had a big effect. They were what, like 13-18 or something when Mike Brown got fired, something like that. And then they go on, they had a
Yeah,
winning record the rest of the year.
yeah,
Um, so
uh,
so now Mike Brown's going to try and do the same thing at following Tibbs. But the bottom line with that is certainly it's easy to follow Tibbs and then be considered the positive coach without question. Like that's going to be a good big dichotomy between the two, and I would anticipate like a good response to that. Now again, when you get to that game five, a halftime adjustment that you have to make that make or break the whole season, is that going to happen? Well, I mean, that's what we're going to have to keep your eye on. And is the execution? Are they going to get caught with their pants down? Not ready for a press. With 30 seconds to go in the fourth quarter, and no press break, no way to attack it, no way to get a good shot, and then throw the ball away, and that kind of stuff. At some point, if it keeps happening enough times with certain coaches, like we've seen with like Doc Rivers, then you have to wonder, like, then that's probably on the coach that's not doing enough to prepare the players.
yeah, yeah. I think that's a great way to wrap up the conversation for today on Mike Brown, because I think with Tibbs and the player's voice, where it was heavy in the exit interviews about not practicing certain scenarios during the regular season. And look, it's a great misconception because people thought, oh, Tibbs, he's going to drive players through the ground in practice, and the Knicks didn't practice at all. But
Hmm.
obviously, to counter that, he played them really heavy minutes and was unwilling to adjust, and try certain looks. And I think the
Yeah.
playbook is going to be expanded. And I did just check the stats, Coach. Assist percentage. You mentioned, yeah, passes per game. The Kings were seventh in pass assist percentage in the 23-24 season, where Sacramento won, where the second seed, Mike Brown, won Coach of the Year, and the Knicks were 29th in assist percentage
Mhm.
that season. So you go from seventh to 29th in assist percentage. That's a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, do the Knicks do that? Do they, assimilate everything like that? We shall see. And just the practice thing is, it's not like they don't meet on the off days or before the games, so like what the shoot arounds, what they used to call shoot arounds. So they did do. I'm sure they did that to some degree, but even those kind of shoot arounds, which you'd walk through some things and discuss, have been curtailed as well a lot. And and part of it could very well be the pushback from players themselves saying, I'm injured, I'm hurt, or whatever. I don't want to do it. And then over enough time, from 2014 to now, they've just evolved into the get together, high five, or like do the huddle, and then get some shots up, and that's about it. Which is probably ultimately was. So it wasn't like they weren't having meetings. I'm sure they're having film sessions. I covered games when the Knicks were in town in L.A. And I saw, the assistants on the bench, but way before the game started with the iPad going over stuff, right? So, there was things that they were trying to do, but yeah, there's nothing that replaces just getting up and down, going over some concepts live, in practice. And if Mike Brown's going to be able to get him to do that, then you should see some improvement.
Yeah, and Mikal Bridges quotes throughout the season sort of spoke to how he felt that certain players were playing too much and other players could play more. So I think that was very telling in terms of, yeah, Thibodeau just leaning on those players too much, and just, yeah, them feeling like they're running out of gas in certain situations. And so, yeah, really fascinating situation approaching this season. Coach, look forward to talking with you in the future. What have you got coming up? I would love to see a Coach Mike Brown video.
Yeah.
Maybe how the Princeton offense can help.
Yeah, well, I get back in another week, and then I'm gonna probably sneak over to summer league. So I got my hands full, but yeah, I hopefully it won't be too old. I mean, obviously we're all gonna be curious about Mike Brown the rest of the summer. So I'll get to that. And as much as I can get to over the summer, there seems to be a lot of moves already. We're waiting for LeBron to get traded or bought out, or I don't know, become the owner of the Mavericks. I don't know what's going to happen with him. That's the rumor, right? Like the Adelsons are going to be like, oh, wait a minute, we're going to take over the Vegas franchise. LeBron's going to and Cuban are going to buy back the Mavericks and have it reuniting with AD. But lots of things, lots of storylines, and certainly the Knicks will be up there. I'm really curious to see what they're going to do, especially who they add. In the anybody else or trade. Are there any other trade rumors with the Knicks, or just adding another player like free agency?
Yeah, well, there was a little LeBron sort of buzz for a day, but I think that's been shot down. Giannis still hasn't demanded out yet, so I think the Knicks will definitely be watching that closely, as most teams around the league. But that's about it, really. Maybe they might pull
Hmm.
off a sort of a really minor trade, but they've got one more spot they can add a veteran. I think they're looking for some more ball handling. So that's going to be
Right.
interesting. Yeah, summer league's going to be great. We actually have 7 young players that are will be either under a two-way or a regular contract with the Knicks. So the Knicks have a veteran roster, but they do have quite a few young players. So summer league will
Hmm.
be great opportunity for Huck Porty, Kolek, Dardier, their first-round draft pick wing from last season. And look, I do think Mike Brown would have been sort of told to some extent that development is key. The Knicks are a second apron team now, and so I think one or two of these young players has to get a shot. You know.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I'll keep my eye on that, and then if Kolek breaks out in summer league again and has some good stuff, then I'll be able to fold that into some more Knicks content. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yep. Likewise, Coach. I always appreciate your time, and everyone give B-Ball Breakdown a follow. Subscribe on the B-Ball Breakdown YouTube channel. Coach does great live streams with his co-host Andrew Combo, um, and more videos and breakdowns to drop in the future. So, Coach, yeah, look forward to talking to you soon.
You got it. Thanks.
Appreciate you, ladies and gentlemen. That was Coach Nick in the building, and we're going to continue to talk about the latest news today, as Yabusele has reportedly taken less than the full taxpayer mid-level exception. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Knicks are going to be able to add some veteran help. Shout out to Yabusele for that, and we'll start there. But we do have some questions that I've starred as well. I appreciate the patience, everyone. Limited for time with Coach Nick, and some of the questions that we missed, I'm going to get to right away. Um, but yeah, obviously, how do you guys feel? I mean, I just need to see what things are going to look like. I think it's a combination of Tibbs, the outgrowing or the Knicks outgrowing Tibbs and the players at this point. Mike Brown coming in as a fresh voice, faster paced offense. He's going to tap into more pace and space. Um, but I think ultimately it'll be beneficial. I don't think a conversation should be is Mike Brown better than Tibbs, or is Tibbs better than Mike Brown? If we're getting a coach that's a better fit for this roster, and I think it's a win. Tibbs just got us as far as he could go. I think right now, with his rigidness and the Knicks being very flexible with their rotations and talent. On that note, Yuri Ark, appreciate you for the super chat, and this thought and comment here. There was a rumor spreading, so take it with a grain of salt. Tibbs and Leon was not on speaking terms along with Worldwide West. Tibbs had bad blood for the front office. Um, Without being, behind those four walls and being a fly on the wall, fam, I do think there is some truth. I could feel like there's some truth to that. Um, Whether they're not on speaking terms or not, I think the collaboration and the relationship kind of frayed. It frayed to a certain degree, where Tibbs was more just head down. I'm gonna do it my way. Trust the way that I'm gonna do it. I've had success, and we're gonna continue to have success. But I think ultimately Leon Rose, he's assembled a front office full of voices and full of minds and ideas, and it's important that those ideas and voices are heard. You bring in experienced Brock Aller, Gerson Rosas, himself, Leon, and his experience with William Wesley, and ultimately the coach should be open to feedback. And I feel like no doubt the case was that feedback, just wasn't heard, at times, and it needed to be heard. And so, yeah, another reason why it was definitely time for a change. And obviously, Mike Brown's in a situation where he's used to dealing with different owners, front offices, and collaborating better. I did think he got a raw deal in Sacramento. I think ultimately they're just not as good. If De'Aaron Fox decides to pack it in, the star player, and the coach is the first one to go. So Mike Brown fell on his sword in that situation, but I don't feel like that's something that's going to carry over, to this situation. I think we're a much better team. Expectations, though, are very, very high. Um, so yeah, I definitely understand what you're saying. Um, in terms of, do I feel like Mike Brown's going to be better for us? Buzzer, in terms of with what Coach Nick was saying, um, yeah, ultimately, I feel like he echoes my thoughts with, you know, utilizing Cat and getting more out of him. I think he also stressed, yeah, passes per game. He did talk about Brunson just being on that ball too much and getting other guys going, the pace, the space. Um, but obviously, I think some concerns Coach Nick had was, okay, Mike Brown's voice has grown tired on certain squads in the past. Um, but also, I look at it like he got tuned out as well. He talked about Kobe. If the star player is not bought in, it doesn't matter who you are, unless you're Greg Popovich. You're gonna you're gonna get the can at some point. But we're in the honeymoon phase. When you just hire the coach, it's the honeymoon phase, and I think this season it's wide open, and let's go for it. Let's see. Mike Brown bringing his Princeton offense to this situation. I do want to talk about the Yabusele and adding to this roster, man. We could add another veteran. I've got a list of the free agents still available, so we will talk about that. In terms of the question about David, about Cam Whitmore getting traded, that was a great trade. Cam Whitmore going to Washington for 2 second rounders. I would have loved the Knicks to get in on that. And I know a lot of y'all are fans of Cam Whitmore as well. So yeah, with David saying, hey, how did Washington fleece for Cam Whitmore 2 seconds? Maybe it just went under the radar. Maybe the Knicks had their sights set on a veteran. I think that is the more logical explanation. I think we are looking at veterans right now. And ball handlers. I think that's going to be really important when it comes to I think closing games out. Turnovers killed us against Indiana. Game 6, Hart, Mikal Bridges turning it over. And in terms of that, I do think there's some fair validity to looking at a CP3 buzzer, but I would not trade Deuce. Would not trade Deuce for CP3. I don't think you need to make a trade because CP3 is a free agent. So yeah, I'm trying to make additions, not any subtractions right now. But this is the tier that I'm coming up with right now in terms of who's contenders for this season, who's short of that, trying hard but not quite there yet, who's in the can't see it, better luck next year, and of course building still, Chicago, Charlotte. I do think Washington could potentially make a play-in with the veteran squad that they've got right now in their rotation. We'll take a look at that. Let us know in the chat, guys. Do you agree? The list of contenders right now, I've got OKC, the New York Knicks, the Houston Rockets, Denver Nuggets. I do think Cleveland, obviously, are still a contender right now. Jury's still out how they do in the playoffs, but they won 60 games, so. But I can understand if you still got them below that. Minnesota, I feel like, is the other true contender right now. So no more than 6 teams, 5, 6 are the true contenders out here. Let us know what you think about that. Dirty Dancer says, hope CP3 doesn't go to the Nuggets. Yep. And also Washington, please just be better than the 8 other teams and don't move up in the lotto. Yep. Or even if they're the 6th worst team, they could slide down in the lotto as well. Yep, Margaret says this is great. Taken less. Yep, Yabusele. We'll look at some free agents up next. Marjan Beauchamp. Don't know the status yet because we haven't extended a qualifying offer yet. We did with McCullough, but I do think Beauchamp will probably be coming into training camp and they'll figure it out. Guys, there's going to be a lot of jockeying for spots this season, so I like it. Atlantic Division this year, AP, yeah, let's go for it, man. Hang a banner and work from that. Work from that and move up. What do you got? Philly, Brooklyn, Boston, the Raptors. Yeah, Boston ain't standing in our way anymore. So I think that is key. So let's take a look at the big headline as Yabusele is taken less. Now, Yabusele spoke about what attracted him to this situation. He said he had the option to play with the Joker, but with Brunson also attracts defenders and is a good passer, and Cat very impactful. So Yabusele picked the Knicks. He also said that Leon Rose led the recruiting. Despite no coach, he felt assurances by the Knicks front office on rotations. So the Knicks front office taking back more control and able to guarantee rotation minutes despite no coach. But obviously they'd already had those conversations with Mike Brown. And Yabusele is already on the texting our captain, Jalen Brunson. So he's ready to go, guys. He's locked in. And he's taken a discount, I think, which is big time. So let's dive into the particulars. Stefan Bondi was on it. So appreciate Steph giving us clarification. Is that Yabusele's contract is expected to land a little less than the full 5.7 mid-level exception, providing the Knicks enough cap space to sign another player on a vet's minimum contract to help out his new team. So shout out to Yabusele, but also the front office. Leon Rose, Brock Aller does it again. And 4D Chess, we drafted Yabusele's agent's other client, Muhammad Diawara, in the draft. So we scratched their back, they scratched our back, and we're able to land Yabusele for less. And why is that key? Because it gives us that flexibility now to add a bona fide veteran contract. Whereas before, we were only able to add, a couple of the rookies to fill out and fall below the second apron. And the Knicks are hard capped at the second apron now, so we cannot go over. So it's important that the Knicks just have that little bit of wiggle room in order to fill out the rest of the squad. So we'll take a look at that in a minute with the Wizards. But now, this is a list of unsigned free agents. Y'all go check it out. If you're not following us on X, give us a follow at Knicks Buzz. And you can see this graphic as I repost it. Now it's quite small, so I'm going to bring it up in large. And the orange is the unrestricted free agents the Knicks can sign right out. The green is restricted. So let's go through some names, fam. On the left is smaller guards. What do we got? We got Bones Highland. Bones Highland's an unrestricted free agent. Cam Thomas is restricted. He's going to stay out in Brooklyn. We've got Cam Payne, Chris Paul, Corey Joseph, DeAnthony Melton, Gary Payton II, Elfrid Payton, Jared Butler got waived, Kyle Lowry. Haven't heard much buzz about Kyle Lowry. He's unrestricted. Landry Shamet. I want to bring Landry back, but if there's a bigger option, I'll definitely look at that. Lonnie Walker IV. I like him. Malcolm Brogdon is unrestricted as well. Markel Fultz, interesting name. Monte Morris, Pat Spencer, Paddy Mills, Reese Beekman, Russell Westbrook, Seth Curry, THT, Taylor Horton Tucker, and Tai Tai. Right. Before we move on to the next column, any takers? Any names stand out to you guys? Dirty Dancer says I like Brogdon. Can still go, but happy to sit as well. Marvin Smith, shout out, says add Malcolm Brogdon. Um, yep. Buzzerbeater says Houston's unproven. Cleveland can't win in money time. Denver maybe, Minnesota maybe. Yep. I hear you. I feel you. AP says it's the third time the Knicks have ended the Celtics. B Low says we need Simmons. I'll hit on that in a minute, man. It's a polarizing name. But yeah, Dirty Dancer says 5.1 million is what Hoops Hype was saying days ago. So yeah, shout out to them. They may have just taken a stab, or they may have been, getting some inside information. But yeah, it's been now verified by Steph Bondy of the Post. And the Knicks, want to squeeze in another vet. It could be a guy that maybe one of these guys have played with before, and maybe there's that relationship. I wouldn't rule out Landry Shamet returning, because we all know it could take longer into free agency. We had Precious Achua waited out last season to try to get a bigger payday, but ultimately he came back. I do think Landry and the Knicks have mutual interest, but we are hearing that the Knicks are reaching out, kicking the tires on Simmons. Malcolm Brogdon is a name. I like Lonnie Walker because he can guard multiple positions, but maybe we do need to go more like point guard, like more ball handling, playmaking. We do have shot making now with the additions of Yabusele and Clarkson. So maybe Colette could be a question mark for the front office still. Maybe they do want to look at a veteran with extra size. The thing is with Brogdon and Simmons, they do add size on the defensive end. Markel Fultz, I think, can be productive still as a third string point guard. 6'4". Does come with some baggage though, some question marks. Seth Curry, 6'1", so that's a concern. I think Taylor Horton Tucker would be a solid addition. 6'4". He could guard multiple positions. I mean, Gary Payton II, that really stands out to me. Can you steal Gary Payton II? Bear in mind, we only have the vets minimum, so some of these bigger names are going to wait it out a little bit just to see if they can get, a bigger bag. But some of these guys may want to take that golden opportunity to compete in the Mecca. Now, as the New York Knicks will be the favorites, the betting favorites to take out the crown in the East and make it to the NBA Finals, man. If you look at the record, we've taken a step forward now from second round to Eastern Conference Finals. Next year, is it the New York Knicks' fate to go one step further and get to the finals and get over the hump? I think a lot of media, veterans are looking at us now in that light. It's no longer no pipe dream. It's the expectation. Belo says I take Highland or Shamet. Buzzer says Brogdon before Simmons, definitely. Yeah, D. Melton. I like D. Melton. That's a good shout. Look, Corey Joseph. I think we could do better than that. I like Bones Highland. D'Anthony Melton, Gary Payton II. I would take a look at those guys, man. I mean, would y'all look at Kyle Lowry? Over the hill, definitely. But, we've got the Villanova establishment. Could be interesting. We haven't heard any connection with that name. I think he did flirt with the Knicks last off-season. But, maybe he likes it out in Philly and stays out there. But they've got Grimes. They've got You know, they've got McCain, they need to blood. They've got Tyrese Maxey now. You know, I think the writing is on the wall for Kyle Lowry. Marvin says no. We already passed on Lowry. Yep. Look, if it's Lowry or Ben Simmons, I think you can definitely make a case for Lowry because he's proven he's a winner. He's got the heart of a winner. He finds a way to play dirty and be scrappy. You know, better IQ than Ben Simmons, but obviously Simmons brings the size. Okay, let's move on to the bigger guards right now. The second column, we got Alec Burks. Hey, I won't be shocked if the Knicks can rekindle that relationship. A bigger point guard, shooting guard. Bryce McGowan's, Chris Livingston, Cody Martin is an interesting one. Damian Lee, DeLon Wright. DeLon Wright. Let's see what happens with that situation. Another guy, he's out on the West Coast now training. He's from the West Coast, DeLon Wright. It'll be interesting to see if the Knicks have interest in returning. I mean, he theoretically provides what we need, another bigger ball handling guard. You know, I think he performed quite well in the playoffs. I think the jump shot let us down a bit, but you know, we could do a lot worse than him. Garrison Matthews, that's an interesting name. I know he can shoot it. Isaiah Crawford, Jay Crowder, that would be a no for me. What have we got? Javonte Green. I would look at Javonte Green. Definitely. Dirty says Simmons has elite D. D Grant salute says Malcolm Brogdon re-signing with the Bucks. Okay. Looks like that's a possibility too. Optimus 2G says Burks would actually get some playing time this time around without Tibbs. Buzzer says Lowry is out. You may as well go after CP3. CP3 I don't think is going to come though, man. I think he's looking at the West Coast. You know, he's really looking at the Clips or the Phoenix Suns. Yeah, I like the fit. It would be a no for Westbrook for me. I respect Russ and the heart that he brings, and I mean he's still in the league, but is that another Josh Hart? You know, is that just another guy out there that they're going to step back three inches or 3 feet? You know, they're going to drop back 3 or 4 or 5 feet from Russ, and we don't need that, right? Johnny Jazang is a name some of y'all may not know a lot about, but he's a serious sharpshooter out in Utah, and they wanted to bring him back, but that was just a squeeze. So I'd take a look at Johnny Jazang. More knockdown shooting, man. Lindy Waters as well. Lindy Waters the third. That's a solid name. You obviously got Quentin Grimes, man. I think it's a stalemate right now, man. It's a stalemate between Philly and Quentin Grimes, man. He's trying to get in that north of 20 range, but they're bidding against themselves right now. Same with Josh Giddey and the Chicago Bulls, and same with Cam Johnson with the Brooklyn Nets. Now, a couple of names that are cut off on the screen. We got Torrey Craig. Torrey Craig is a good name. 6'5". Can guard multiple positions. I like that. Look, I'll be okay with going true point guard or another wing that can shoot or defend at a high level. Because look, Tyler Kolek is still here, and I think we need to see what Tyler Kolek can do. He could be the solution to the playmaking aspect. You know, I think you could have lineups of Tyler Kolek and Deuce McBride. What do y'all think? I don't think you can play Tyler Kolek and Jordan Clarkson, but Tyler Kolek and Deuce McBride, I think Deuce is that kind of more off-ball wing shooting guard that can get it happening and can fill it up. And I think that's a better fit than the campaign Deuce pairing. And look, they're allocating a lot of money to Tyler Kolek for a second round draft pick. He was the highest paid second round draft pick rookie contract in history. So it's hard to see them giving up on him after 1 year, especially with Thibodeau gone now. But maybe they're looking at a bigger guard that can defend multiple positions, like a Simmons. Uh, don't forget, I can also bring up the point that the Knicks were looking at Dante Exum. So Dante Exum was a 6'6" point guard wing also, but decided to return to Dallas. He was seriously considering the Knicks, and the Knicks were in talks with Dante Exum. But so if you look at that and you look at the fact that they're looking at Ben Simmons, that's two big guards out there. Um, so DeLon Wright could come back. He's a free agent, so we don't know if he's gone yet. He could return. Buzzer. He's a free agent right now. He's exploring his options, but he's unrestricted, so he could return. But right now he's a free agent. He's not under contract with the Knicks, so technically he is gone. D. Grant says Deuce was not consistent shooting and was terrible in the Pacers series. I think, yeah, there was some inconsistency, but Deuce was suffering from an injury late in the regular season. I think he was working his way back and started to come good was bad in the Detroit series, but started to come good after that. Optimus 2G says Javonte Green is a name to keep your eyes on. Yep, definitely. I like that. Building Block says Kolek is a good trade chip. New York has no use for him. New York has to use him before he loses more value by not playing. Definitely, I think, he could bring back some decent value if the league can see what, he's capable of doing. And I think it starts next week, fam, at Summer League. Dirty Dancer brings up some great points. It's clear that we wanted another ball handler after Brunson was wear down against Indiana. Yeah, just another change of pace guard. Look, theoretically, Cam Payne was a good change of pace guard, but he was just too erratic and looking for his shot. If you look at TJ McConnell, that was the better example of what we want Cam Payne to be. Get downhill, get to the teeth of the D, make the defense collapse. Pull fullback baby jumper, or survey baseline like Emmanuel Quickly used to do. Someone like that. Kolek can do that. Kolek loves the baseline dribble, like TJ McConnell, loves to do. Kick it out in the corners. One thing I'm also paying attention to is Kevin McCullough, because he can be a secondary on-ball playmaker as well. He was that role in college. He was sort of more of a on-the-ball facilitator as well as off-ball. Now, he's not a true point guard, but Kevin McCullough is a guy who could be like a Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges sort of on-ball usage. So they could see potential. They could see potential in a role like that for Kevin McCullough as well, as a 6'6", sort of ball handling guard. Couple other names, Dougie McDermott, Dougie McBuckets, great movement shooter, a little washed up right now, but he's not too old. I don't think Doug McDermott is like, that old, but he'll be end of the bench kind of guy. I would probably lean more towards Garrison Matthews, younger and is a high volume 3-point shooter as well. Javonte Green, Johnny Jazang, I think would be closer to the top of my list. Torrey Craig as well. Let's see as the names continue to get linked. But all of this is possible because Gershwan Yabusele has taken less than the full taxpayer mid-level exception as well. But also, Yabusele went on record to confirm that Philly didn't offer him anything more than the vet minimum. So they lowballed the man. No wonder he's hungry to come out and beat them down 4 times, as he texted Tyrese Maxey that I'm going to beat y'all 4 times now as well. He also spoke about the heart and the desire of this Knicks squad, and he feels like it's a good fit. Yabusele said, I can see the way they play over in New York. They played hard, and they stick together, and they had that winning mentality. And I think that's a good fit for my game. So Yabusele had a choice to go to the Denver Nuggets as well, but I think he took slightly less to the Knicks, and I think it's all working out right now, man. It's all part of the plan. The Knicks drafted his agent's other client, Mohamed Diawara, as well, and had 3 French prospects. Dwayne Lewis, I like this comment too. Yeah, his tough play fits the Knicks' identity. Yabu showed team first. I need that jersey looking good out, Yabu. So, yeah, the Knicks continue to land big free agents. I mean, he had his choice between a number of teams, and I think it was a solid coup for the New York Knicks. Don't forget, Clarkson could have gone anywhere as well, man. I mean, the Knicks ain't giving Clarkson any more than the vet's minimum. He could have chosen another team, but we do have some good options, rotation-wise, and he was with it as well. Bol, we'll talk about him in a sec. Yep, you guys are on point. Smash that like button. You've got the Knicks streets buzzing, man. I'm giving the off-season an A- so far. If we complete it with another solid veteran signing and add a really good assistant next to Mike Brown, man, this is going to be an A off-season so far. I like the fact that we didn't mortgage the future for Kevin Durant. Let's not forget about some of the best moves you make are the moves you don't make, ladies and gentlemen. I want to see what this core can do without Thibodeau. With respect to some of the things he did well, I think we could take our offensive versatility to the next level, and I want to see what Cat can look like as a spaced out big man. Yabusele is a perfect complement. I assume Josh Hart will be played less, although we know Mike Brown's a big fan of Josh Hart as well. One of the biggest wins the Knicks had last season, guys, was when Josh Hart killed the Sacramento Kings. Mike Brown came out and was glowing in praise for Josh Hart back when he was the coach of Sacramento. Well, now he's the coach of Josh Hart. So he is going to understand what Josh Hart does well, but we've got more options now, and I think we need to spread the minutes around. Dirty Dan says, all I'm asking for is one of Pacome, Kevin, or Kolek proves that they can really play. Yep. I'm optimistic. I think at least two of the three. With Pacome, it might take a couple more years for him to really pop. Look how long it took Quentin Grimes. You need constant minutes, I think, to work on your game. Kevin McCullough, I think, is more ready right now to be a role player and do some of the things that we need. Kolek, the same thing. I think they can be winning players for 10 minutes a night right now. Pacome, I think, has a much higher ceiling, but I think might be a little bit further away. But at the same time, his game might come together a lot quicker in terms of the shot creation. Margaret Edwards says Knicks are trying to win the championship. They're not trading anyone. Yeah, they're trying to do full additions, not additions by subtractions, things like that. If you think of look at all the players we've added and look at the players we've lost. We've only lost Campaign in theory right now. We've lost Precious Achua. We've lost PJ Tucker. And maybe a couple of the two-way players, Marjon Beauchamp, Anton Watson, and maybe Landry Shamet, which we've kind of replaced now with Clarkson. And so we've made additions. We haven't really lost anything by subtraction, in my opinion. So that's big time. Buzzerbeater says, CT, has Giannis ship sailed? He's not going to win anything in Milwaukee. It's definitely not sailed yet. Um, in terms of, I think he will leave Milwaukee. I think he's strategically playing this out. He's a very smart man, Giannis, and I think he has a couple of destinations that he would be open to. I don't think he's going to be like a NBA, an NBA hoe, to try to be as politically correct as possible. I don't think he's going to say like, 8, 9 teams, six or seven teams. I think, when he's ready to formally, request a trade, I think it's going to be to like 3, maybe 4 at the most destinations. And I think those teams, have to be in strong positions, get as many picks as available as they can. And he might just be waiting it out right now. So yeah, with contending, I think 10-man rotation right now. Huck Porty could be the 10th guy. It could be Kolek. I'm not ready to rule out any of the young players just because we're contending. Don't forget, guys, it's an 82-game season. There's going to be some injuries. There's back-to-backs. There's going to be blowouts. There's a new coach coming in. There's foul trouble. There's, Mitchell Robinson. Maybe you play it more cautiously. I think there's an opening for a 10th guy. They might be situational sometimes, but I think there's an opening right now. Maybe it depends on who that veteran is. Maybe the selling point to signing one more bigger name veteran is that we have to offer them some guaranteed minutes. I could see that. Maybe Huck Porty, slides back to situational, and Yabusele plays the small ball 5 off the bench or alongside one of the other bigs. And maybe, we promise some of these other vets a guaranteed role. Because look, Russ or Simmons or whoever the bigger name is, we're not gonna bring them in unless we've promised them a role. They're not gonna come here to sit on the bench. So we talked about the guards, guys. I think we're pretty set with the bigger names, with the bigger players. But with that said, there are some bigger players with ball handling skills. Let's take a look. So on the third column, we got Amir Coffey. We've got Al Horford still, but I think Al is going to go to Golden State. I don't know what the holdup is with that, but we'll see. Amir Coffey, 6'7", unrestricted free agent. Bismack Biyombo. Could the Knicks maybe go one more big? What do y'all think? A rim protecting big, because we know Yabusele is more of a power forward, combo forward, but Bismack Biyombo is one of the more veteran rim protectors out there. Chris Boucher. Chris Boucher is a big name that I'm surprised still hasn't been snapped up yet. Again, he could be looking at his situation like, his agent could be looking at, okay, let's find the best spot, where we can get minutes. Maybe he's waiting it out, hoping to get some more money. That's a possibility as well. Chuma Okeke, Delano Banton, familiar names. I think we've been linked to Delano Banton in the past. Chuma Okeke obviously was with the G League Westchester Knicks, was with the Knicks on the two-way and the training camp last year. So, I think Chuma Okeke will probably come back for training camp if he hasn't been signed by another team. You do got to fill your training camp spots to 20 spots. So the Knicks will bring in some faces into training camp, and maybe they'll battle it out for a two-way. Dom Barlow, good power forward there, 6'9", with potential. Maybe Atlanta. It's a bit crowded. It's crowded in the ATL front court. Amani Bates, Enrique Freeman is restricted. We'll see what Indiana do. Isaiah Jackson, restricted as well. Jake Toppin, Maybe he comes back for training camp, but I can't see him getting back onto the squad. Kessler Edwards, Kevin Knox, Lamar Stevens, Marjan Beauchamp, Mook Morris, Micah Potter, Oscar Chibwe, Precious Achua, Taj Gibson, Trey Lyles. Trey Lyles is a name I would definitely be looking at. A versatile forward that can play center as well, can shoot it. Tristan Thompson, a hard pass for me. Fam, hard pass for me. AP says the NBA has to get rid of back-to-backs. Yeah, so interestingly, Adam Silver's discussed starting the season a little bit earlier, fam. I think to maybe, maybe cut the off season short a little bit, but at least you give players a more softer schedule during the regular season because they don't want to cut games. They want to keep it at 82. There's just too much revenue coming in, and the players aren't going to take a discount. For the CBA to keep going up, they need that revenue from the TV money. So they're not going to cut 82 games. I think their best way to lighten the schedule is just to start the regular season earlier. I mean, the off season's pretty long, man. NFL, European soccer as well. The off season's not as long in some other sports. What do these guys need 4 or 5 months off? Just soften the schedule a bit with less back-to-backs. Yeah, I get competing against the NFL is tricky too. But again, the schedule is just a killer right now. There's just too many, too many glorified scrimmages during the regular season, back-to-backs, and some of these teams just don't care right now. Too much tanking as well. So yeah, I would definitely look at Chris Boucher, Trey Lyles, Amir Coffey. What else? Look, I like the athleticism of Isaiah Jackson, but he's a restricted free agent. I think they're probably going to bring him back. He's coming back from an injury too. Look, man, I hope Precious lands somewhere where he can get an opportunity. I don't think it's going to be with us, but I know Precious, gave us a couple of years of service. Was a good locker room guy from the New York area with family connections. We're just moving in a different direction, but thank you, Precious Achua, for your service. Same with Taj Gibson as well. And we go a different direction right now. So the final column, we've got Alex Len, Ben Simmons, Bol, Christian Koloko. Jock Landale just got picked up by the Memphis Grizzlies. Marvin Bagley III, Thomas Bryant is an unrestricted free agent. So out of that list, I would only go Ben Simmons. And I would be open to Ben Simmons, but I'm not that high on the move. But I think he can provide some more ball handling and passing. The Knicks need the ball to move. And Simmons can also guard 1 through 5 at 6'10" as well. Now, in terms of the baggage element, I think that's overplayed a little bit. Like, until someone can provide me a tangible example of like Ben Simmons being bad in the locker room, last year with the Clippers, I think it's different. When he's earning $40 million. That's a different story. But on a vet's minimum deal as the 9th guy, I wouldn't have any problems with that. I believe our locker room is tight and got good support. But yeah, I think size and playmaking is where we need to go. What do y'all think? Yeah, Susan Salute says DeLon Wright is out, Campaign is out. So thanks to Yabusele for taking that discount. Look, I think Landry Shamet coming back would be okay. I'd be open to go in another direction. just because we've already added Clarkson. And when you got McCullough and Dardier, there's a couple of double ups with that. You got Deuce McBride, Josh Hart. Where's Landry going to get those minutes? Whereas if you beef up the point guard department with size and ball handling, they could actually get some minutes. We know Clarkson can play at the 2, Deuce McBride at the 2 as well. And the more you can protect Jalen Brunson, the better. The less reps on Jalen Brunson, the better, fam. Julian Velasquez, salute. Vooch might get bought out from Chicago. Man, I saw that too. Yeah, I think they're trying to trade him. They're really, really been trying to trade him for a minute, but no bites on that right now. So it could be another massive contract get bought out. But do we need that? I mean, you could make the case the Knicks were interested in DeAndre Ayton, but we signed Yabusele. I mean, if Hukporty's the 10th guy, you could have Vucevic, come off the bench. Maybe you can't play Vooch next to Cat. So Vooch is just going to have to agree to a bench role, fam, because you can't start Vooch with Cat. But if you could sell Vooch on like a 25-minute a night role off the bench, but I do think you'll probably look at another situation where he can play more. Yeah, nice point from Susan. Well, I also think that the Knicks are stacking just in case a trade for the Feb deadline. That's a great point too. Yep. Sometimes rotation log jams have a tendency to fix their and solve themselves during the trade deadline, because you could sell a guy at the trade deadline for more pieces and have the depth. Russell says Shamet plays good D. Yeah, definitely. But I think he's got to be comfortable with another situational role, and I don't know if he's be okay with that. Maybe he doesn't have a choice. He's kind of like an 8th or 9th man at best. In the current NBA landscape. Yeah, I like Shamet's production. AP says, how long is Dame going to be on Milwaukee's books? I think 5 years, fam. I think 5 years now. I think it's going to go all the way to 2030. Yep. I think his contract is extended and stretched, the buyout, until 2030. So that's some dead cap space that Milwaukee is eating up, fam. And, that's a prime example why Giannis is not going to stay there, man. There's no way they're going to be able to build a legit contender. There's just no way. So with that said, right now, I just feel like Giannis is just holding on. He's just waiting, I think, for the right situation, for the right contender to put together the right package. A lot of these things happen behind the scenes, guys. He just doesn't come out and formally request the trade unless, he's put the feelers out there. And he would already know what kind of couple of teams that, he could see himself joining as well, fam. Now, Cleveland, I think they've been dangling Darius Garland a little bit, so I think they could put together a package. Darius Garland would be a nice centerpiece for some team. I think so far they've had some conversations with some teams. I think Minnesota got really close to doing the Kevin Durant trade. They'll be open to putting together some pieces around Ant-Man. And then I think, look, the Oklahoma Thunder or the Rockets and the Knicks would all get in on a Giannis trade as well. I know Golden State would be desperate, man. Golden State would be desperate to try to put somebody next to Steph Curry. They ain't got the pieces right now, man. Dallas, I think, do. I think Dallas have some of the pieces required. Brooklyn, I think Brooklyn obviously got the pick capitals, and I think New York City is that attraction to Giannis, but I don't think they could really put together a winning situation, quick enough. Uh, so yeah, I think the Knicks are going to add one more bigger name. We've got obviously our guy Yabusele taking that discount, talking to French media. So far, so good. I like everything that's been coming out from the camp of Yabusele. So far, he's slandered Philly out the door. He's big up Leon Rose, the recruiting, and the Knicks squad. Feels like it's a great fit. Cat very impactful. Brunson's leadership. He's texting with Brunson already. Feels like chemistry's on the up. Guys, chemistry is on the up. We know Jordan Clarkson was very excited. Been wanting to come to the Knicks for a little while as well. So we're bringing in two guys that really want to be here and happy for their opportunities. They're going to play. They're going to play. So big upgrade, in my opinion. Now, if we add one more solid name, that could be insurance or a possible rotation player. I think this offseason would be an A right now. And it's all eyes on Summer League. So I think the Knicks will announce Mike Brown next week. And Ian Begley with reports. And CP, the franchise, earlier talked about Mike Brown getting a 4-year deal. Right, 4-year deal now, in the range of like 9 million-ish, 9-10 million, maybe with some bonuses added, incentives added in. I'm sure if Mike Brown can get the Knicks to the NBA Finals, there would be a nice little present, built into that contract. The next domino to fall is obviously his assistant. I think the Knicks are trying to get James Borrego. I think that'll be the next domino. We'll find out whether or not, the Knicks have been officially shut down, or we're bringing in somebody else. Who do y'all feel? Throw some names out there. Who do y'all feel could be a good lead assistant next to Mike Brown? I'm going to guess it's probably somebody he's worked with before. I wouldn't be surprised. Now, Mike Brown is obviously very defensively focused, but good offensively as well. But I do think we'll probably go more of an offensive and defensive coordinator. I think that was one of the things that Tibbs just didn't utilize, and so I've got mixed feelings over some of the assistants returning, with Darren Erman reportedly returning is Darren Erman, Mo Cheeks, Mark Bryant, Rick Brunson, Jordan Brink. Right now, no Dice. So we'll see. It does look like Dice, Andy Greer, and Tibbs. Obviously, those not returning. Creative Lou says Mike Anori. He'd be first choice, man. A lot of people wanted him for the head job, and if we could get him as an assistant, that would be a home run. But I don't think he's gonna be able to escape Minnesota. He was their lead assistant, so I think it's kind of more of a sidestep. Yeah, D Grant, Mo Cheeks, Mark Bryant. I think they're easier to keep because they're sort of more on the fringe, working with maybe some of the younger players and development. Phil Handy has been reported. That's been a bigger name reported out there as well. So we'll see how that plays out. I thought this was great from Keith Smith of Spotrac. Some of the things to look out for Summer League, and I share the same, sentiment in terms of what am I looking for from the Summer League team when we're evaluating next week. Do the rookies look like they can hang athletically, right? How does Tyler Kolek look, defensively? Has he made strides? Has he put on some muscle and can shuffle his feet and just not be a liability? Um, if he can hang athletically, we know the feel for the game, IQ, the passing, all of that is going to translate. I've got no concerns over Tyler Kolek being, a an impactful playmaking guard on the offensive side. How can he hold up defensively, right? Also, his experience, his headiness, savviness, especially going up against other experienced and non-experienced players. Um, we know that the Knicks have signed a couple of athletic guys, man. Dink Pate, Pacome Dardier, Kevin McCullough. Very athletic, man. James Nagy, very athletic. So that's something to look out for as well. How refined are their skills, right? Second point, what skills do returning players show off? One of the things I'll be looking for Kolek is the 3-point ball. If he could be a real floor spacing point guard, man, he needs minutes. Tyler Kolek, I think, has real upside with the 3-point shot. I think there was moments in the corner. He knocked a couple down. He can play on ball, off ball a little as well. I'm looking at Kolek's 3-point ball. Flash some of that in the G League. With Pacome Dardier, I'm looking for him to limit turnovers and see if his shot creation has maybe gone up a level. Maybe with the handle, maybe sort of like tighten the handle a little bit, or just putting on some muscle can help him get to his spots. He does have a very skinny lower core, does Pacome Dardier. So I think he needs to strengthen the lower core. But he's got the high release, the fadeaway jump shot. He's got a very effective J. We're looking at the playmaking aspect for Kolek, right? For some of the other guys, it's going to be the first time we're seeing them, so it's just going to be like a blank slate. In regards to Mohamed Diawara, Dink Pate, and James Nagy, this is going to be our first look at those guys. And so it could be a pleasant surprise. It could be a case of we're like wowed, or we see a glimpse of the future. Yeah, we need Dardier to blossom, definitely. Dardier is the best pathway into the rotation that I can see, in playing with starters and with the bench, fam. Because 6'9", 6'8", that could slide into a wing spot with starting minutes. Not to start the game, but he could play with the starters in certain lineups, and of course off the bench. Hart's undersized, and we need the 3-point shooting as well. Yeah, Yabu could be a great mentor for Pac-Man. Definitely helps. I think having your fellow countrymen in the same environment every day, locker room, and Mohamed Diawara as well. I think if he's on the two-way and around the squad, that could definitely be big time. But I think Pacome Dardier last year, having a full season in the system, full season with the squad, with Hart, Brunson, and everyone in that locker room, most of them returning. I think Pacome Dardier was like, getting a lot out of last season, with the extended postseason run we had as well. And last but not least, my biggest point that I agree with Keith Smith, man, are second and third year players dominating, or are they just out there? Expectation is that experienced players should stand out in summer league, right? Right, you kill or be killed, eat or be eat right now, and a lot of hungry lions coming into summer league. That's what I'm looking for. Because every year there's some players coming in with a chip on their shoulder. Maybe they've been out of the league for a year and they're trying to get back in. You got these veterans like, the Australian guard they're bringing in, Barber, the Japanese guard they're bringing in. 29-year-olds, some of them, 23-year-olds. They're coming in playing for a pro contract. And then you've got guys that went undrafted, guys that feel like, hey, I should have got selected ahead of you. You don't deserve my spot. I'm coming in to see what to light it up. So second, third year players, Kolek, Dardier, Hakporidi, and that. Let's see if these guys can actually dominate. I think the Knicks got one of the most deepest summer league rosters right now, and for what we know, they haven't released. The Knicks have not released their summer league full roster yet, so that's going to be interesting to see any other surprises. We'll probably have Johnny Davis, we'll probably have Chuma Akeke, maybe some of these players. Be funny to see if Kevin Knox is still in summer league again. Kevin Knox been playing summer league still, fam. Every year you see a player in summer league where you're like, man, how is that guy still there? Like you got these 28-year-olds. Roberto Torres says Huck already in the rotation. Brown will play 10. Yeah, I lean towards Huck Poridi now being the 10th guy, but we'll see. I just think as Clarkson can do a lot of the ball handling, Kolek might find a tougher pathway to get into the rotation. In terms of the Barber guy, Buzzer, so yeah, I wanna say this carefully, but as I said last stream, it's predominantly a summer league squad signing. It's no connection to the Knicks squad, the Knicks big squad at this point. So I know some reporting gets confused and some aggregators, and people get excited anytime you see the Knicks have signed someone, and understanding the certain contracts and that. But the truth is, every summer league team squad has players filled from outside. They just need players to come in and fill the squad up. So Barber is a guy that is not going to factor into the Knicks squad, and the Knicks main squad. He's just there to help us out in summer league, parlay his performances into a pro contract somewhere. It's all about outreach, just giving these guys an opportunity. It's nothing to get hype about when it comes to Barber. He's a 29-year-old overseas player, a journeyman. The Knicks are already stacked at their roster anyway. So what this is he's coming in as a summer league guy, basically. So we look at this table, man. Mikal Bridges was the #1 player in fadeaways last season, man. Effective field goal percentage, 46.9%, on 192 fadeaways in the regular season, man. More fadeaways than Kevin Durant, LeBron James, and Shai Gilgeous. What do y'all think about that? Mikal fadeaway Bridges. Look, to his credit, the mid-range fadeaway, I'm not mad at it, Get to your spot. 2 dribble pull-up. 2 dribble pull-up fadeaway. Where I have a problem is, at the rim. Finish at the rim. If you can get to the rim, Mikal Bridges, we don't want that to be a fadeaway. Right. Fading away in the mid-range, that's fine, because, he can get that shot, and he's comfortable, and he shoots it at a good percentage, and you can't stop it. You can't block it. Look at Durant, James, Shai Gilgeous. No one's blocking their shots. That's why they're the leaders in fadeaway attempts. So if it works, tap into it. But with Bridges, I want to see him finishing stronger at the basket. That might be wishful thinking. He wants to keep his Iron Man streak going. Obviously, it's good for the Knicks if he continues to play and not miss games, but not at the detriment of ducking contact. We need to see him finishing contact, with contact, fam, as well. Now, I know it's still on people's minds, but what's going to happen if a possible big name becomes available, man? Look, until Brian Windhorst continues to put these subliminals out there, we'll see. We'll see if the Knicks do anything else. They look like they're set, but we got some big unknowns out there in the league right now. So he's talking about Giannis, and well, mostly Giannis, maybe LeBron, but with credit to the reporting of the Knicks beat, James Edwards, Steve Popper of Newsday, and Fred Katz as well, I think have kicked around on the LeBron thing, and they haven't gotten any, warm response. So looks like LeBron to Knicks is not really in the works. It's not happening. It's not going to happen. But the Giannis situation, I think, is what Brian Windhorst is alluding to, and obviously that's fair. That's fair play because, you know, who's not going to be interested? Who's not going to be ready if Giannis asks out? And a lot of this happens behind the scenes, like I said. Um, if and when Giannis makes it official, he might not this season. It might be next season. We'll see. But I mean, look at their roster right now, man. It's Juju. I mean, Ryan Rollins, Brogdon. What is their main point guards? Who else have they got? They've got the wing Kyle Kuzma. I mean, they've got Bobby Portis. They're signing buyout guys, into their main rotation. I think they've got basically, no chance right now. So we'll see what happens with Giannis right now. But until then, the Knicks will keep this core intact, right? Interesting little update overseas. Rokas Jokubaitis is going to change teams. He's going from Tel Aviv to go to Bayern Munich in Germany. So another hint that Rokas, no traction coming to the Knicks, no discussions, no interest on both sides. Rokas is changing teams in Europe to continue his career out there. I think if he's ever moved, it'll be in some, throw-in trade where the Knicks just need to add another stash guy to someone else's squad. So Yabusele says, I think the Knicks was a great decision because I feel like their team, it really matched my DNA. I would say to fight, to play hard, to be there, to be the kind, to go hard and fight every night. What I like about the team is what they did also this season. A couple of teams they played against, we played against them like, oh my God, this team plays good together. Like they're a good team. It's a good group of guys. There's no bad guys. There's no problems, he said. Interesting, man. Sounds like he's sick of playing with Embiid. Sounds like he's sick of playing with Paul George, man. He wants to play with a real team. Historic franchise. Right. Throwing shades, throwing shots at Philly. He said from what he's heard, Mike Brown's a great coach. They just told him he's a great guy, listens to his staff, he wants to go hard. You saw what he did in Sacramento too. They were the first team in offense. So yeah, he's done his research, man. He knows he knows what he's getting into. He knows what he's coming into as well. I mean, this is some of the best sound bites that I've heard from a free agent coming to the Knicks. He knows what he's getting. Reports Chris Procyon and Jordan Clarkson was fouled on almost 11% of his shot attempts last year, 76th percentile, and 9.4% the year before, so in the 69th percentile. So Clarkson gets to the bucket. He can get fouled. Heavy drive is going to open the defense up. And Clarkson averaged, I think, four or five free throw attempts. So that's great. That's going to go up because guess what, guys? Look how little our bench scoring was. Clarkson's average of 16 points per game was entirely, outscoring the Knicks bench last year. Not only that, how many times did our players on the bench get to the line, man? Cam Payne would never get to the line, man. He would throw up the floater or the step back three. Landry Shamet would never get to the line as well. Mikal Bridges, midi fadeaway Bridges, never gets to the line. So if Clarkson's not only bringing the scoring, the drives, and the assisting, he's also going to get to the foul line with his aggression as well. So that's going to be great. And I know it might not be pretty defensively, but sign me up for some Brunson Clarkson minutes, fam. Maybe some Brunson Clarkson Bridges minutes, if Mitch or OG are on the bench. Because the more gravity and, scoring prowess around Brunson, man, it's going to be a lot easier for him. He's going to be able to eat even more. And the spacing is going to be legit as well. So with respect to Mikal Bridges, with respect to his, defensive potential, his 3-point shooting above the break wasn't legit. And so if you can bring in more of that, the better, fam. Creative Lou says, yeah, that says a lot about Philly. LOL. Yeah. AP says, CT, didn't the Knicks get some kind of stash player from the Bucks? Yep, Hugo Besson. He's a French point guard, but I don't think he's ever going to come over, fam. 6'5" point guard. He's actually a very, very productive player overseas. He's a crafty point guard that can play above the rim a little bit as well. Yeah, that's just another stash player that the Knicks are stacking up. Yeah, man, Clarkson and Yabusele, they fit the squad to a really great level. Let's see what we do, man, with the final spot. Brogdon, maybe Simmons, another point guard, possibly another wing, and we'll follow it closely out here on the streets of buzzing, ladies and gentlemen. You guys have been on point tonight, chilling with us, with Coach Nick earlier, first half of the show. Second half tonight, chopping up the latest, and Yabusele's quotes coming in. He's excited, and I think some of the Knicks will be out there in Summer League, chilling and maybe meeting with some of the rookies. I expect to see maybe Hart or Brunson in Vegas showing support to some of their young guys on the squad. Summer League squad's going to be legit, and I can't wait to see who pops, who's going to show out. And obviously we find out soon when Mike Brown gets announced next week, who they lock in as the assistant. Is it going to be Phil Handy? Is it going to be someone else? More guys to come in. Looks like Dice, Andy Greer, and obviously Tibbs will make way. Darren Ehrman, Mo Cheeks, Mark Bryant, Jordan Brink, and Rick Brunson are staying. Rick Brunson in a lesser role. So, thank you for joining us, guys. Smash that like button. Appreciate y'all. Have a rest tomorrow. Come back Monday, and we'll talk about the latest. I think we'll get more confirmation on Monday coming through. Yeah. Happy 4th and enjoy the weekend, everyone, and smash that like button. Take care. Peace.